Welcome to the Game of Her Own podcast, a podcast about women who work in sports. I'm your host, Jahaan Blake. After 15 years of working for 3 major league teams, including the Boston Red Sox, Los Angeles Dodgers, and the Chicago Cubs, I discovered the one thing I loved the most was helping women in sports shatter glass ceilings and take their seat at the table. I loved it so much that I made a business out of it. I have the honor of coaching high-performing women in the sports and entertainment industry and supporting them as they go after exactly what they want in their career. So if you are feeling tired of waiting on the sidelines, done being overlooked for promotions, and you're ready to pull ahead of the pack and take your career to the next level, girl, I'm here for it. I also created the Game of Her Own podcast to support you as well. We are here to share the stories of incredible women who work in sports and entertainment. These leaders and trailblazers will inspire you with their success and the lessons they've learned along the way to the top. Ladies, there is nothing like women empowering women. I am so honored you're here. All too often, we are waiting to be told that we are the one. And in reality, we should just be the one. Do you ever hear a line and it immediately inspires you to knock down and smash whatever is holding you back? That is exactly how I felt when today's guest dropped this gem. I was legit thinking that this episode is gold and I cannot wait to publish it for you all. Actually, that's how I felt the entire conversation with Sarah McKenna. She's the Senior Vice President of Fan Services and Entertainment for the Boston Red Sox. It was gem after gem during our real and honest conversation. So what's cool about this is that Sarah was my first boss in baseball, and this conversation took me way back. Sarah is one of my favorite and by far toughest bosses. If she wasn't tough on me though, I tell you, this introverted girl over here might be on a different career trajectory or career path right now. Maybe tough isn't the right word, but let's just say this. She pushed me out of my comfort zone, and she did it when I wasn't willing to push myself. That's a good boss, and for that, I am forever grateful. So I am excited for you to jump in and listen to our conversation, really because she keeps it real. And maybe she will inspire you to step outside of your comfort zone. You are going to love hearing her perspective. I might be biased because she's my old boss, but I'm going with my gut here. Enjoy. All right, Sarah McKenna, my first boss in sports.
I was going to say, maybe in sports, but you definitely had a jump for me.
Oh, I definitely did. But it wasn't, that person did not compare to you. So welcome to the Game of Her Own podcast.
I am so honored to be here. Secretly, I've been watching them all go, and I'm like, I wonder when Jahaan's going to like me enough to invite me on his podcast. When will I get the call?
What's funny is I was like, I was like, Sarah should be my first. And I was like, nope, no. I need to practice them before I get Sarah. So
way too judgmental.
I wasn't thinking that, but I thought I had to get my game together and I'm feeling good. This is going to be like episode 26.
I have listened to a few of them, not all of them, and they are awesome. So I'm so impressed by all the different spectrums of sports that you're putting together, like people from all different types of roles in teams and leagues and organizations. So kudos to that.
Well, thank you. So if you listen, that means you know what the first question is going to be. I need you to take us back in time and tell us when you first fell in love with sports.
Well, I will let you know when that happened. Right now, it's a big headache in a pandemic. No, when did I first fall in love with sports? I liked playing sports. You played soccer, I played soccer. Like, there's that competitiveness, whether it's you like to win or you hate to lose even more than you like to win. For me, like, sports has always just been something that I really loved. I mean, the camaraderie of it, the lessons that it teaches. And I've had the opportunity to sort of look at it through so many different prisms now and perspectives. It's interesting because, I used to always sit down and I loved watching the Olympics every 4 years. And honestly, when they moved it to every 2 years, I was like, thank God I don't have to wait for every 4 years for the Olympics. I can watch it every 2 years. And they alternated the winter and the summer, and the storytelling is amazing. And I just remember that old, I'm older, and I just remember that old sporting commercial. It talked about, the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat. And you just heard these compelling stories of people and different things that they've had to overcome and different ways in which they chose to work hard. So to play sports and then to be involved in it and understand the business of it, but still its role that it plays in society with perspective to that is so amazing. And then now, having children that are playing sports, I have a daughter that's on a team at a collegiate level, and seeing what that's done for them and what that continues to do for them, it really just is important to, I think, society. For physical movement, competitiveness, they're all healthy if done the right way, I should say. You know what I mean? And they can be an outlet for some that is, mirrors something like the arts. It is some people's art form.
You just said a lot of great stuff, but I'm really stuck at the daughter in college because it makes me feel so old that your daughter is now in college.
You met her when she was 1.
Yes. And she came to my house
when she was 1, and next year she can walk into a bar and buy you a beer.
Oh, man. Wow. I didn't even get that far. All right. Okay, good. Okay. All right, feeling old, but talk to us a little bit. When did you decide that you wanted to work in sports? I know how you fell in love with sports. I know you love the art of storytelling, which you are so good at. But when did you decide that, that's where you wanted to be? You wanted to work in sports?
I don't really know. I think, my parents had presented it to me as an option. I had worked on and off during winter break for a family friend that owned like a minor league hockey team, covering some games, doing some odds and ends. And then from there, it was just something that, I'm going to be honest, it didn't really seem like hard work. When I got into it because I thought it would be fun. And I was at a point in my life right after college where I wanted to work and I wanted to pay the bills, but I wasn't having the mindset of I've got to go out and I've got to conquer the world and I've got to make my millions. I was on a joyride with some of my friends traveling cross country, and we ended up in Oregon. And the priority was fun more than it was fun and paying the rent. Mm-hmm. And probably in that order. Mm-hmm. I was going to say, you have your whole life to be serious.
Are you serious now?
I think I have my moments of being serious. Right, the world feels heavier now than it felt to me then. I think the responsibilities are different, but I think also too the world just feels heavier right now.
Yeah, that's totally fair. Now, I know about your first job, I believe, in sports, because you told that story a lot, like you were like a parent. We can recite the story for you. But tell everybody about your first job in sports.
My first job in sports was working for a minor league baseball team in Oregon, and I basically did a little bit of everything. I mean, if you've worked in minor league baseball, you do a little bit of everything. You pull the tarp, you have to dress up as the mascot, you have to do the slingshot in between innings, you have to sell sponsorships, you have to sell season tickets, and even more so, and answer the phones. So you just did everything, which I think is amazing because you get to learn what you like and what you don't like. And I always say that learning what you don't want to do is just as valuable as learning what you do want to do.
Uh-huh. Talk about that job. How much did you make?
Oh my God, I made nothing. Nothing. I think I made maybe $700 a month.
Ooh.
A month, Jahaan. Once a month, I got paid.
Wasn't there a story of you were on a bike and you had a 30-pack and you were
yeah, so I drove cross country. I didn't have a car. So I was down. My dad had said he'll give me enough money to get there and he'll give me enough money to get back. But that was it. So while I was there, I was done with money and I didn't have a job yet. So I think I had like $26 in the bank, and I took out the last $20, and I didn't have a car. I had a bike. And so I rode to like the Safeway or the Albertsons or whatever it was. And I put like a case of beer on my bike, and I was trying to bungee cord it to my bike. And this guy came up to help me, and he was like, "Are you all right?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Well, I just spent my last $20 on this case of beer, and I'm going to go figure it out." He was like, really? You just spent your last $20 on this? And I was like, did you have a better suggestion of what I should spend? Like when you're down to $26, you know what I mean? But like, like if you absolutely had to call for money, like there's the privilege. But the reality is that I was not going to call for the money. I was going to figure it out. And so this guy, I owned like a mid-sized construction company, and he had a warehouse, and he was like, I just lost the guy who ran my warehouse, and I need someone to help me while I'm doing, while I find someone. Do you want to come and work in my warehouse? He's like, it's just like 2 miles down the road. And I was like, yeah, I'll be there tomorrow because I have a bike and I can bike 2 miles. So I rode my bike, and we came up with a deal that he was like, all right, you can do 1 interview a day. If you get offered a job, you just have to finish out the rest of the week. So if you get offered a job on Monday, you can start the following Monday. If you get a job on a Thursday, you can still start starting Monday.
Wait a second, stop. I don't know that I knew this part. So he allowed you to interview for other jobs?
Yeah.
But just still come in, and you just had to give him basically like a week's notice.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so I worked in his warehouse, and I drove a forklift, and I learned how to do various things. I think the welder was broken out. I had some moments where I was being taught how to weld. It was random and odd, but it was giving me money. I believe more money than I ended up making at my next job working in sports. But I knew someone who put me in touch with the owner of the baseball team in Portland. And I went and had an interview, and the guy said, listen, it's the middle of the season, because it was the middle of the summer after my graduation. So it's the middle of a season for a short season single A baseball team. Like that's the shortest season going. And this was the middle of the shortest season going. So he said, listen, I don't have a job for you, but you can sell programs. And I was like, programs isn't going to pay the rent, so I can't sell programs. But really in my mind, I was also thinking like downtown Portland is like 20 miles from where I'm living right now outside of Portland. And I could never ride my bike that far after the game. So sure enough, I said, thank you very much. And I went on my way. And he had asked me what I was doing, and I was like, oh, yesterday I dug a ditch. The other day I was driving a forklift. And he called me back about 3 weeks later and said, I want to know if you want to come to a game and sit with me and talk about having a job here. And I was like, sure. But and he said, I just can't stop thinking about if you were willing to work that hard for this other place, how hard would you work for me? If you're out there like digging ditches, doing these other things just so that you can pay your rent, like how hard would you work for me? So I went in, he offered me a job. I started out answering the phones, and then it just kind of evolved into a lot of things.
Wait, how did you get there?
I borrowed my friend's car, the car that we drove out. And then once I got the job, I leased a car.
Ah, okay, got it.
It was a Tercel, and the lease was $99 a month, and the insurance was $106 a month. So my $700 a month was now quickly down to $500 a month. And then I had to pay rent.
But rent was nothing, right, back then?
It wasn't a lot. I think I was probably paying like $250. So I had like $250 a month to eat and get gas on and have a social life.
Wow. All right. So how did you go from Portland to your next job in sports?
Again, I had answered the phones one day. Like the way that it worked was at lunch. It was this great place up the street where we used to get bento. And the bento boxes were $3. So we all got bento all the time. So $3 for a bento box, you cannot beat that for lunch. It's absolutely, it's amazing. So there were a handful of us in the office, and we used to just take turns on who would stay back and answer the phones. So I think it was my day to stay back. And someone called from the commissioner's office of Major League Baseball, someone like pretty high up. And they were like, I have an emergency with my daughter that lives there. Who is your team physician? Who's this? Who's that? And I was like, oh my gosh. And so I helped him, connect with the doctors that we use for the team and do all this other stuff. And then anytime he needed anything in Portland, he would he just called me. Like, I think he was this very nice older man that just was like, my assistant is on vacation. You're going to be the one. You're my new assistant. And I was like, okay, like, no problem. And so,
are we talking about the commissioner of baseball? Like,
not the commissioner, like someone that worked for the commissioner.
Okay,
and I'm gonna like save the name because I don't like it could come across in a way where like he was the nicest guy, but it was like, why did he just keep calling you to do this?
Now knowing you, I know why, but that is funny at the time, right? Like you're like, what?
Like never met before. But so then it actually evolved into, he was like, can you help me out? My assistant is on vacation at one point. I need to make a hotel reservation. Can you recommend a hotel in Portland and do this? And what airline should I fly? Like his daughter had clearly moved to Portland and he needed to figure some stuff out. And she was dealing with something like serious, but not like life-threatening. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So sure enough, I'm like, yeah, sure. Like we can put you at this hotel and this is the airline. And he's like, oh, okay. Yeah. Can you help, with that flight? And so I ended up like booking this guy and his wife's flight and his hotel room and putting it all on my credit card. And so like when it was all set, he was like, okay, great. Like, thank you so much for all this. And I was like, hey, so here's the deal. Like, I'm so happy that you get to visit your daughter. But I put this all on my credit card. Can you send me a check? I make $700 a month after tax. So sure enough, he was like, oh my God, why did you do that? Like, and he's like, I'm so absent-minded. I can't believe like my assistant just takes care of everything for me. I was like, I get it. Like, it's cool. So he sent me the check. Anyways, he was fine. We're all good. Couldn't have been nicer. And then I met my now husband in Portland. Mm-hmm. And it rains a lot in Portland. And he was like, I'm ready for a change. He was from Massachusetts too, where I'm from. And so he was like, I'm going to throw some resumes out to San Diego. And he got a job in San Diego. So I was like, yeah, I'm ready for a change too. And it was kind of like that interesting point in your life where you're saying like, when does my desire to be with this person outweigh my desire to continue doing something solo for myself? Does that make sense? Like, so it was kind of like a big deal. It was like, not only did I need to define my relationship, but I also needed to give up my job and do all these other things. So it was like, where am I going? And it wasn't like we were moving back home. We were moving to a whole nother city. So once again, I called the guy from Major League Baseball and I was like, hey, I'm leaving. But the wife of our owner says, if you ever have any emergencies, here's her number, give her a call. She'll help you out. And he was like, thank you. Or your daughter. And he was like, thank you so much. He's like, I'm going to call the Padres for you. And I was like, okay, sounds great. Appreciate it.
You didn't even ask him?
No.
He just offered.
Yeah, he just offered. But I secretly was not really fired up about staying in baseball because in minor league baseball, you do everything. I was like, I really don't want to pull the tarp anymore. Don't want to dress up as the mascot. Like, I didn't really understand the difference between minor league and Major League Baseball. Mm-hmm. So sure enough, I get down there and he's like, I've set up for you to meet with this person. And I'm like, great. So I go and I meet with Larry and this guy, Tim, and Larry and he's always to the point, always been to the point with me, which is what I love about him. He's like, well, because of who called, we got to give you something. He's like, so you can have an internship. And I was like, my internship days are over. But secretly, much like turning down the job for, because I didn't have a car and I didn't want to bike that far, I didn't want to take the job because I didn't want to pull tarp and do all those other things that I had been dressed up like a mascot. So I, again, turned it down. I had gotten another job offer from a company called American Golf. So I worked for American Golf, hated it, only because it was sales. American Golf is a great company, but it was sales. I did not like sales. Tournament sales, and just all that cold calling. Like, it was not for me. Uh-huh. So everybody was really nice. It was, no complaints with the company. It was just cold calling was not my thing. And so they called back. The Padres called back and said, we're running a campaign to build a new ballpark. We have to hire some people to work on the campaign. It's a 3-month contract. Would you like to take it? And I was like, yes, I will take this. So the way I looked at it was I had 3 months to figure out what to do.
Who are you going to during all this for like advice and to bounce things off of? I mean, these are major decisions, right? Like trying to figure out, although I know your goal when you got to the West Coast was to have fun. and make money. So like, what's your decision-making process for all this?
I mean, I was just going to, like, I know when it was time to move to San Diego, the girls that I lived with, one of which has started and sold many companies now in our lives. Karen, you've met her,
Yep.
The inventor of the Red Amanda.
Yes. For those of you who don't know, the Red Amanda is a bag, and we have lots of Red Amandas for our gift bags as ambassadors. But go on.
So I bounced stuff off of her when I was debating, do I move to San Diego with no job to follow Bill, my husband? And I knew the answer deep down, but sometimes you need people to tell you, like, these are good life choices you're making. You know what I mean? Because picking a partner is a huge life choice. It is a massive life choice. It says a lot about where you want to go, who you want to be, what type of relationship you want to be in. And it's really a partnership. So you got to go into that one with eyes wide open. And then in addition to that, I think I just was talking to myself and trusting my gut and weighing risk versus opportunity. Mm-hmm. And so I probably was a lot bolder at that time because risk versus opportunity there wasn't that much of a difference.
Right. I remember those days. So now you're at the Padres in this 3-month contract. You're doing something completely new, right? That you've never done before.
Yeah. I mean, when I was in college, I had interned at Washington, D.C. and had some work in that realm. And this was actually, technically wasn't for the Padres. It was for the Citizens for San Diego, or Ballpark for San Diego, and Citizens for Revitalized Communities or something. It was the campaign to build what is now Petco Park and the 26 blocks of surrounding redevelopment. And so it was basically just 3 months straight, up at 6 and out the door by 6:30, to be at every breakfast, and then ending the day with lunches, campaign events, dinner, speaking. And I was just doing a lot of support it was essentially like Larry Lucchino was the candidate because he was the president of the Padres and he was selling the concept of the ballpark. So it was a lot of work with him, just making sure he was prepared, had everything he needed, and things were being done. And then they capitalized on my minor league baseball experience to sort of intertwine the political with the Prop C campaigning at the ballpark. And we were great that year. We went all the way to the World Series. The Padres did. It was 1998.
Man, so that was just 3 months of just hard, like, put your head down work, is what I'm hearing you say.
Yeah.
You guys were just grinding. And like, what are you thinking? I'm like trying to get in your head here. Like, what are you thinking when you're going through all this? Are you thinking, what's next, right? After these 3 months, are you trying to impress the people you're working for? Or are you just simply just
I don't think I'm smart enough to think ahead at that point of like what could come out of this, if that's, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not a personal strategist. So like, I've never been like, if I do this, I can parlay this into this. Things reveal themselves to me more than I try to influence them and make them happen. And maybe I'm unknowingly influencing things and making them happen, but that has never really been my ultimate skill set. From a personal standpoint, like I can manipulate to try and make things happen, like on behalf of an organization or things like that. I can do that quite successfully. What I cannot do is, and maybe it's just I don't do it, is, or think I do it, is for myself. So I didn't really look at it like after 3 months, if I work my butt off, I'll be the one person that's offered a job from the campaign. I was, but I never looked at it that way. I just was like, I have 3 months to make some money and figure this shit out.
Man, that takes a lot of patience and just like faith. I don't know.
Yeah, but you also have to be like I really knew that I did not want to do cold call selling. Like cold call selling is like, there's a special place in heaven for people that are capable of doing it.
I agree. I 100%
It's just
agree.
really hard. It's really, really, really hard. And I give a lot of props to people that are able to do that because it's an important part of sports.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so you were the one person who got a full-time job after this 3 months was up. Is that right?
Yeah.
And what was that job?
It was working in government relations. So what we did, government relations manager, I believe was the title.
And this is for the Padres or for the city?
This is for the Padres. And so basically after we won the election, there had to be, I think it was 15 more votes that had to be approved by the city council before we could have like the absolute financing. And there were some more through the Port Authority. So it was just this mess of opinion that you had to maintain and keep going so that the project could not fail. And so we had a director of government relations and then myself, and that was pretty much it. And we, a couple people came and went from the department as the expanse of the project grew. My boss, she had worked in city government with San Diego for a long time. She was chief of staff to the mayor. She was very influential in the city. I learned a ton from her. She is a workhorse. She was a workhorse. And it was just an interesting time of learning a lot about doing a lot of politicking and public opinion and keeping the project on track.
So now, all right, you're in the Padres, you're at the Padres, you're manager of government relations or some title along those lines, right?
Right.
And then you make your move to Boston.
Yeah.
Talk more about what that was like and that decision. And at this point, are you married?
I'm married. I have a 1-year-old. And it wasn't really a decision, Jahaan. I was laid off because my position was eliminated, much like what many people are dealing with right now in the pandemic. Is positions all over the place are being eliminated. And because we had broken ground and because the project had been moved ahead and because of the financing, as they evaluated for the next year, my position was eliminated.
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Let's pause there for a second, because there is a lot of people who are getting, laid off. Positions are being eliminated and, in sports and entertainment because of COVID. There's a lot of broken hearts out there right now. What advice or what would you say to people who are listening who are going through that right now?
It's hard to see it, but you're going to learn a lot from it. You're going to learn a lot that things will be okay because you're a hard worker, or you will be okay. You know what I mean? You just learn a lot about yourself. And that's really valuable, because I think in sports especially, you can get really wrapped up into the team aspect and giving of yourself. And it is this constant thing weighing over your head of 10,000 people would love to have your job. I mean, how many times do you hear how many people would love to have your job? Wow. So if you constantly felt like the world was gunning for your job, I mean, that's a nerve-wracking place to be at times. And I don't think that we acknowledge that enough about how much pressure that puts on us, or anxiety that builds. Or even when people come up to you and say, oh my God, you have a dream job, right? You have the best job in the world. I would do anything to have your job. And then you lose that job. Well, you feel like you've let other people down because like your family might like to brag about where you're working, or your friends, or you might find value in it because you're like, yeah, you can use my tickets, or you can do this, or you can do that. Like you are able to bring joy to others. And then when you lose that, I think that people oftentimes can feel like they've lost almost their superpower.
Mm-hmm. Yes, because you tie it up in I know for me, working in baseball, was my identity for so long. So
yeah, no, it's crazy how it becomes like the most important thing in someone's life. And it becomes so much of their identity. And it's really, really, really hard. And I think that when you do lose your job, you are able to put a different perspective on it.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And I remember when I was fired from the Dodgers, I was sitting so my boss at the time, so not Sarah, you all, but my boss at the time took us all out. It was like a group of 10 or 11 of us who got fired, and took us out to dinner at some fancy hotel in Beverly Hills. And I remember Sarah calls me and says, it's okay. It's a badge of honor. Like you have to look at this as a badge of honor.
Yeah.
And people will have more respect for you now. And I was like, all right, well, I'm just going to have my little, pity party for the rest of the night. And then tomorrow I'm going to pick myself up and keep on going.
Yeah, it's all you can do. Like, it really is.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, I was like, I have a 1-year-old.
Yeah, I was just going to ask about that. So how did you handle?
I had a lot of faith because there were a few other people let go, and they were like, we're going to be fine. We have so many options. And so there were like some different scenarios on the table. I think I was just a little nervous because, like I said, I had a 1-year-old. And I had just come off too, before that, when I had her, I was on bed rest for a really long time in the hospital. So I had a hospitalized bed rest. So I had felt like I had missed a lot of work because for medical reasons, I was in the hospital from like September to January. So to take yourself out of the game for that long, and this is pre like all of this. Like I couldn't Zoom into a meeting from my hospital bed. I was just straight up missing the meetings.
Yeah.
And I could have done a lot of things, but technology just did not allow it at that point. So you just had to have this other level of faith in a different ability to compartmentalize. I think in a lot of ways, I'm thankful I didn't have that option. Like if I had, like I needed to focus on being healthy at that point in my life. And I imagine it's very similar. Like imagine right now if you're dealing with like a working executive dealing with like breast cancer or some other thing going on, and you're able to like, and you thought you needed to zoom into everything. Like I know, like you just need to be healthy. That's what you need to do. Like you need to be the best version of yourself and then get back at it and have faith in your abilities to get back at it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think my mind was probably just swirling with a lot of anxieties. There's probably a lot of post-traumatic stress to unpack there, but that's probably not what this is.
I'm not a licensed therapist, so no. But I do appreciate you sharing. But your job has been eliminated. You have a 1-year-old. You're trying to get your mind right and think about what's next. And how did the Red Sox job come to be? Share with everybody.
Well, a couple of the people that I was working with, Larry Lucchino and Charles Steinberg, were also out on their own at that point, and the sale of the Red Sox, and Larry was working on the sale, and it was just like, if we get it, we're going to go. And I was going home for Christmas, and they announced the sale from San Diego. So my husband, my daughter, and I are flying home. And when I boarded the plane, it was like, it doesn't seem like it's going to go to us. Thank you for everything. We're going to figure this out. Like, don't worry. Everything's going to be okay. We're going to find a spot for you. Like, whether that was helping me find a different team or a different place, that's what it was. And then I had a layover in like, I don't know, Cincinnati or Pittsburgh or one of those places. And at the layover, I listened to my voicemail on my cell phone, and they were like, the sale went to us. Cause like you weren't getting feeds on the phone. Like you weren't,
right.
Like, none of that was happening.
There was no Wi-Fi on the plane.
So I listened to my voicemail and I was like, oh my God. And it was really exciting. So I got home, and then because I was back home in Boston, I was able to go to the press conference the next day. And it was really, really interesting. And so then it was like, when are you going back to San Diego? Because we need you to pack up and move back here. And I'm not even sure I asked my husband his opinion at that point. I was like, are we going to do this? And he was like, yeah, we got to go back home. I think, and that's where the partnership comes in, is that I had moved to San Diego for him, and he had moved, and he moved back to Boston for me and for us.
So tell everybody what you do now, what your title is.
My title now is Senior Vice President of Fan Services and Entertainment. And it's probably like that aggressive mismatch just because I've never really like cared about my title. So I probably should have I should probably think of a better one.
And wait, say more about that. Why do you say that?
I don't know. I just never when I went to the Red Sox, my very first business card was just my name.
I remember that. I was like, what does she do? I don't know. It's just, she's a director. Her name's Sarah.
It was just Sarah McKenna. And because I remember when I showed up, a lot of people went to spring training, and myself and Janet Marie Smith were at Fenway. And she was doing her thing, and I was helping getting ready for opening day and do a bunch of different stuff there. Because it was like 25 days till opening day after the sale was done when we could get in the building. And so it's this big, hi, how are you, of this storied franchise of, so we have to get a lot done. And they were like, what is your title going to be? And I was like, I don't know. And I just remember the head of HR was like, how much money are you going to make? And I was like, we haven't even discussed that. And they're like, what are we doing here? And I was like, I just really need a laptop, a cell phone, and some healthcare. And the rest will just let me figure it out with them afterwards. There is so much work to do. And so we had it all worked out by opening day, but I was like, I need some business cards, and we haven't figured out the title yet. So they just gave me business cards with just my name on it. Which, looking back, I should just keep those.
Yes.
Those are the ones I should use, because none of the information on it has changed since, 2002. The cell phone number, the desk extension. Yeah. I could just go back to those.
So what falls under you as Senior Vice President of Fan Services and Entertainment?
It's the fan services department, which does a lot of customer service in the ballpark. I would say Red Sox events. So if you wanted to book like a wedding or something, you would go to another department. But if the Red Sox were going to throw a fan fest or a celebration for, like if we were going to throw it ourselves, they would say it would fall under my area in that fan services area. In addition, the ambassador program, which is where you started and worked for me, which was an amazing program that we started up, deals with a lot of customer service, like I would say like VIP customer experience as well too. In addition, I also oversee our production department, which over the years has grown from in-game production to all of our video-based social content and produce some television shows for Nessun. And I'd say that's really it. And through the pandemic, that area has evolved into even a lot more. We're doing online concerts for the Dropkick Murphys. I have something coming up with another group that is later this week that I probably can't say yet, but whatever. But yeah.
I have some free stuff for you. Yes, you. Ladies, I know how difficult it is to take the steps to level up your career. I have been in your shoes. It's why I started coaching women in the sports and entertainment industry. If you feel stuck, frustrated, or defeated, I'm here to help you find your voice and tackle what is ever keeping you from getting exactly what you want out of your career. So the free stuff, I want you to head over to jahaanblake.com/free. That's jahaanblake.com/free and check out the 3 worksheets I have for you. You are welcome to download 1, 2, or all 3 of them. These free worksheets will help you stop self-doubt from preventing you to taking your career to the next level. Prepare you to pitch your boss for the promotion or raise you know you deserve. Identify exactly what you want out of your career and what matters most to you. So if you are ready to get started, head over to jahaanblake.com/free and girl, download those worksheets. I am so excited for you to take this step. Okay, back to the interview. All right, so you went a long way from woman with business card and just her name on it to becoming a senior vice president. So talk to us a little bit about what that, I know this is a loaded question, but talk to us what that journey was like getting there, right? Becoming an executive to becoming a senior executive. And I'll say this, from where I used to sit, I'd watch you go to meetings and, be the only female leader, right? Senior leader, even when you were director, right? Like, which is what you ultimately started out at, correct me if I'm wrong, but like you were the only female and you were just somebody who I got to like watch. I'm like, God, my boss is a badass and there's no other women at the table. And I don't know, is that something you knew was happening? Like you were one of the few female who had a seat at the table. And did you feel pressure from that sort of like a sort of responsibility?
Yes and no. Like there's just a pressure to succeed in sports in general. And I don't think that that's exclusive to male or female. I think it's a highly competitive, pressure-filled environment. I think that we just have different ways of dealing with it. Like, I don't think that a lot of my male counterparts who are fantastic just say like, I just need to go in a back room and have a good cry and then I'll feel better and I'll come back and I'll kick ass. But I need like 3 minutes to just recompose. But I also think that they still feel the same amount of pressure. I just think on some level, there's just like a different set of hormones in play. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
100%. So with that, I don't think it's different, but I think when you are the only one, whether that is because of your gender, because of your race, there is a loneliness that comes from that, and there is a lack of relatability. So you don't really feel like you can talk about how you're feeling.
Yes. So I worked for you. Who did you go to? Who did you talk to about this, right? Like, I know you weren't talking to me about it because I was your employee, but who did you go to?
I think every couple months I would have like a meltdown to Charles, and then he would be like scared of me and then just be like, go deal with that.
So for everybody who doesn't know, Charles was Sarah's boss at the time at the Red Sox. Okay, keep going.
Yeah. So like but it was stupid stuff that I would have meltdowns over. Like, I can remember like I wanted my daughter to have ballet lessons and I couldn't find any ballet lessons on weekends. And the only ballet lessons that were happening near me that I could get her into were at like 10 o'clock in the morning on like a Tuesday. And I was like, I have to quit my job. And he was like, why? And I was like, because I can't get this mom thing done and this done. It's too much work. It's too like, it is too hard. And she can't even get into a ballet class. And I like went on this ballet rant and he's like, well, I can say with great confidence that no one in the Red Sox doesn't want Jameson to take ballet. But it's these things that you feel like are insurmountable because you can't, I'm pretty good at working the problem and finding the solution and finding the creative solution and figuring things out and just getting it done. You know, people always say like you're burnt out because you're constantly pulling a rabbit out of your hat. Like you got to sometimes give yourself a break from pulling the rabbit out of the hat. And so when I couldn't figure out those things, it would just be crushing when I couldn't work those problems on how to meld the parenting and the work.
No, it makes total sense. It sounds though, correct me if I'm wrong, that Charles was supportive. Like it's almost like you just kind of went in and was like, I can't figure this out. I got to go, or whatever it was that you said to him. But
yeah,
it's almost like he didn't let you. Obviously, he didn't let you go.
Right. He didn't.
Like he kind of helped you work through it, right?
Yeah, there's multiple times I quit on him and he did not let me leave.
So I like how it's not that you went in and said, I need this in order to be able to do both, take care of my daughter, get her to ballet class. Like you were just like, I can't do this, I'm done. And that was the nature of your relationship with Charles. You wouldn't recommend this to other people, but like, this is just your relationship with Charles.
No, it is. But it's also like, I never really think it's somebody else's job to work my problem. Like my problem of mixing my work life and my career is my problem. I was not good at that. I also think that now there is more tolerance for working people with those problems. There's more technology for people to work those problems. That those things didn't exist on some level when my daughter's going to be 21. 20 years ago, some of these tools that we use now to help manage this, I'm pre-BlackBerry.
You are pre-BlackBerry. I guess so am I, yes.
And the thought of everyone having a BlackBerry, because BlackBerries were so expensive, was like, I can't even comprehend that, but I was there.
Yeah, I do remember when you gave me my first BlackBerry and how excited I was.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, I have to like give myself a timeout from my phone because I'm so addicted to it. And It started with my very first BlackBerry. So thanks, Sarah.
Which is why I say like, thank God I had to do that bed rest at a time where I could only focus on being well.
Mm-hmm. So talk a little bit about how did you advocate for yourself, right? You don't go from director, or maybe you do, you tell us. You don't go from director to senior vice president. Just kind of, people don't come up to you and say, oh, time to give you a promotion. Like, how did you advocate for yourself to become the executive leader you are now?
It's a skill. I would argue that it's an exercise that I had to be worked on. It wasn't something that I just knew how to do. I was not very good at it in the beginning. I probably should have advocated better in certain areas. But I was always happy to just gather the work because, sometimes some people's philosophy is, you have to do the job before you actually get the job, which is, one school of thinking, but then you're also doing the job and not getting paid for the job that you're actually doing.
Yep.
So figuring how to bridge that gap, I think probably one of my, for lack of a better moments in advocating was we would sit in this room, senior leadership, and I was probably the lowest one on the hierarchy at that point. So being the lowest one on the hierarchy, you were also in a room like that catching, shit flows downhill, for lack of a better phrase. So you're catching most of the work. Mm-hmm. But at that time, I was also at a place where I was not only just doing the work, but I was ideating the work and saying what we should be doing. So I found myself in a space and time where I was really dominating the meetings, as in like, Sarah will do that, or Sarah, how would you do that? Or what should we do? And sort of pounced on that moment because there were a lot of career executives in the room at that time. And I just said to my boss at the time, I said, I need you to do me a favor. You go into these budget meetings and I don't. And you see what everybody's making and I don't. I need you to ask yourself a question while you are doing these reviews. And I need you to look at them. And then I need you to come to one of these meetings. And then I need you to look at it again after. And if you can sleep at night, knowing that I'm compensated fairly based on my work, then I can sleep at night. And that's all I want.
All right. That's a lot of trust and faith in your boss, right?
There is a level that's like, no one's going to open up the books for you and tell you how much all the other, in these privately held companies, how much your other counterpart is making. Like you have to have that relationship and that trust with your boss. And in addition to the people in HR, like you have to, like, it doesn't happen where they just open up the books.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great way to kind of put it on your boss, really.
I was like, I'm just doing a lot. And if you think that I'm being commensurate with that individual and calling people out, I was like, then I'm good. But it shouldn't be because I need to work 20 more years to get to their level. And it shouldn't be because you didn't have to work 20 more years to, I'm sure, get beyond them. So why do I have to work for 20 more years to get to them?
Did that work, I guess?
Yeah, it totally worked. And I was just like, damn, I've been underpaid. It used to just be a culture where I think in sports in general, like you're just going to be happy. You're just happy to be here. And I think there is this wave now where it's like, is my value commensurate? People are just looking things different ways,
yes.
Which is a good thing.
Yes. So, okay, let's flip it. I know you manage all these teams and these employees. So what do they do well when they come to you? I'm sure they don't know your trick, not yet.
No, some do, because I've told people.
What do they do well when they come to you to advocate for themselves for that promotion, that raise, or even just more responsibility?
So first off, I recognize how hard that is. Like for someone to come and say, I want more money, I'm worth more money. And I don't care who you are terrified that you're going to get the response of, we don't think you're worth that. For someone to work up that level of personal courage, I think shows a lot of personal and professional growth. And this is something that I actually deeply value. But I also value that in a lot of different ways. Like I want people, for lack of a better phrase, taking care of their business all over the place. Because I just think that that's really important, So people advocating for their worth, people advocating for their financial well-being is not a bad thing. You can have a real conversation with them, and a lot of these things are probably going to be happening right now. There's a lot of people in sports, I would imagine, that have taken pay cuts, myself included, during a pandemic. And there's also people that are probably looking down the barrel of, sports teams aren't going to be able to give raises for a period of time. So what are you valuing? What are your priorities? Because if it is financial growth year after year after year, is this the right year for you to be in sports, for lack of a better phrase? And what are you willing to, because you can't discount the fact that no one has gone to a sporting event in a long time.
Yeah.
And as someone who's been going to games, when you walk through the concourse and you see like the seats all empty and the concession stands not working and the souvenir stands, like nothing happening, you're like, oh my gosh, like it is vacant. And it's unnerving. It's unnerving. So I always like to recognize that the person just coming and doing that took a lot. It takes a lot, particularly if they're doing it for the first time. And as you know, I've gotten a lot of people that is their first time job. The nature of my work is I deal with quite a few individuals that it is their first job, and launching them to their next job or helping them find their next job, and being part of that process is something that I enjoy. So even if it's, I have had to have conversations with people to say like, I don't know that you're going to find that growth here because that person currently has that job and there's no reason to get rid of that person.
Right.
And sometimes you find yourself in a roadblock where you can't just invent a job for somebody, but you can help them find the job that they want in a different way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally makes sense. And it's taking me back to when I was part-time and wanted to be full-time, but I didn't want to work anywhere else. I wanted to work for you. I was like, no, I want to be in this department, but there were no full-time roles.
Right.
So even like, I mean, I was so junior. I was like, how do I even have this conversation? I have no idea what I said to you, but obviously it worked. And then after a while, I mean, I made what, $32,000 was my first salary in sports.
Yeah.
And I think it was actually like I made less than I was when I was at part-time because of overtime. And then I had to ask for a raise, you know, after I'd been there for a year. And again, like I have no idea how to do this. Like, what do I do? Like, people are like, oh, ask hi. You know what I mean? Like, do this. And I just was like, I'm just gonna be honest, like, and see what happens.
That's all you can do. Like, there's not some magic method. You know your boss. You know the methods to use your boss. Like, and not use your boss, but the methods to, you know, reach them. I mean, if you don't know your boss well enough to be able to sell them on being able to do something, then you probably need to work on that relationship before you ask for a raise.
Yes, I agree. And I see that a lot with some of my clients is their bosses don't really understand the work that they're actually doing. You had a very clear understanding of what I did and what I was taking on. Like, my favorite thing about working for you is I used to tell people, I'm like, oh, Sarah just goes out and like gathers more. And because of that, I get more responsibility. So it's great. Like, so I'm not, the only thing I had to do is just pitch myself to be like, can I help you with that? Can I take that new thing on because you have something new on your plate? But a lot of people I talk to, their bosses don't have a clear understanding of what they do.
Yeah, it is. It's really, really, really challenging when you don't think that they understand what you're doing. And if you don't have that ability to connect with them and show them what you're doing, they're probably not going to be in the mindset where like you're going to go beyond the standard like 2%, 3% raise, whatever companies are giving out. You know what I mean? Like,
yes. And it is my favorite thing to do is to help them kind of package it all together to tell that story of why they should get the raise. But yeah, I'm with you on that.
And it's really, really hard if you're in the sports industry sometimes if you're not in sales. Like, if you are in sales and you are putting yourself in between the person giving the money and the person getting the money, you have real clear benchmarks of what to do. I think social media allows some level of transactional accountability in the sense of, you know, I was able to do this and it got this many likes, or it got this, or it got that, or whatever. In my line of work, it's always been, could you get the thing that no one could buy? And that is the front page of the paper. Like, you cannot get an advertisement. You can't buy the front page. I mean, maybe you can. I don't know. It used to be that you couldn't, but who knows? Like, but you can't put an advertisement on the front page of a newspaper. The front page is the front page. It is the thing that happened.
Yeah.
So if you could create an event, if you could create an experience, if you could create an emotion where someone is the front page of the paper, that's all you can do.
How many times were you on the front page of the paper? Not you, but your work.
Oh, it's been a few times, but I don't really like count. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. That's not like you to count, but it was totally like me to like count or notice all of those things. Maybe it wasn't even the front page of the paper, but whatever those huge accomplishments you had, you really were just like moving on to the next thing. And I was like,
and sometimes like I'm cocky as shit and I'm like, no, I'm going to get the front page of the paper. So like, I remember one time like calling someone at Major League Baseball and like also calling Charles and being like, just so you know, if you had something planned tomorrow, I'm going to beat it. And they're like, no. Like, what are you doing? And I was like, not telling. And they're like, well, you have to tell us. And I was like, no, I remember when you guys were at the Dodgers, one thing we were doing, it was before all these like military reunions. They were happening where people were coming home and they were surprising their kid in the classroom. We have a really good relationship with the military and everything. And we got a girl from Southie back from the Middle East to do a surprise reunion.
Jeez.
Shockingly, round trip tickets to Bahrain are not that expensive. So they were like, we'll get her to Bahrain. You got to get her back and forth from there. And I was like, no problem. And we did one of those reunions on the 4th of July, but it was kind of the first one that they had in sports. I think the Super Bowl had one like oddly different, but we like hold this girl up. She landed at like 11 o'clock at night on July 3rd. And so on the 4th of July, she did her thing and she came out from underneath the big giant flag. And there was this great picture on the cover of USA Today, which is not even like the local paper. Like if you get the cover of USA Today.
Yeah.
And it was a whole bunch of different papers because everybody was like, that flyover was sick. And I was like, and as you know, the first pitch comes after the flyover. And I was like, wait. And everybody was like, and I can remember like someone at work, I was talking about it in a meeting and I was like, this is confidential. You can't say this, but we're getting a girl back from the Middle East. She's going to have a reunion with her family. Her family's going to think that they're coming to talk to her on the video board. And so one of the guys that I work with who I adore was like, so you're just like getting someone back from like the war, like from, and I was like, yeah. And he's like, you think you can do that? And I was like, no, it's happening. The girl's like en route, like, and I just remember my boss looking at him and saying, that's why she has her job. And that's why you have your job.
What?
So
it's like a drop the mic moment.
Yeah. But I mean, he does a great job in what he does, but
totally,
like, no discredit to him. He's one of my, like, I love working with him and he's totally capable and has saved my ass a million times in events. So I remember calling people. I remember because you guys were at the Dodgers at this point and I called Charles and I was like, just a heads up, like you shouldn't even bother trying. You should not even bother trying for the 4th of July this year. And he's like, what do you have? And I was like, I don't want to talk about it.
Oh my God, I love it. I love it.
He was big. He was the person that taught me, like, you got to get the front page of the paper.
Mm-hmm.
That's your job.
That's incredible. I love that story. And I was laughing during it, not because of you bringing somebody home from the war on the 4th of July. It's because your dog is snoring.
Sorry.
So you had these big idea, like big front page of the news ideas. And you said you were known for just like always coming up with these big ideas and ideating at work. I got to imagine that you don't always get yes. Even though you're great at what you do, you don't always get yes. So how do you deal with the rejection? And I ask that so you can kind of give others advice on how to deal with that.
There's sometimes where I just don't even ask.
You guys cannot see Sarah right now, but I swear she's got this little evil grin that came on her face when I asked this question.
No, but I mean, you know how this goes. Like, why would you ask? Like, if you know something's going to work and you know it's going to be awesome or it's going to be sick or it's going to be great, why would you ask too many questions?
Because someone listening might be like, oh, well, she's an SVP, so she can do that. What if you're a director?
I think it all depends on the influence that you have over your budget. Like if you're given your budget in the work environment that you work in, like you are on some level, I'm sure, empowered to make decisions and do things that bring positive exposure and impact to your organization. So if you have something and you know it in your bones that it's going to be good and worthwhile, why wouldn't you just do that? It's the asking permission.
It was just, yep. Mm-hmm.
Do you have to ask a lot of permission? Like I tell people how it's going to be, and I kind of have always been like that. I mean, with Charles, it was different, like when we were working together, because he is so creative and he is such an ideator and taught me so much. But I remember calling him for something after you guys had left and gone to the Dodgers, and he was like, this is you. You have to figure this out. Like, you have to do this. And from that moment on, I was like, oh, I'm the one that has to figure this out. All too often, like, we are waiting to be told that we're the one. And in reality, we should just be the one.
Uh-huh.
Like, what's the worst that's going to happen? You're going to get in trouble?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not recommending that people go off and spend reckless amount of dollars. But if you're like, I think it would be really cool for us to invite, I don't know, I'm looking at your Untamed book, Glennon Doyle here to throw out the first pitch. Like, why wouldn't you just go do that? Like, why would you ask for, like, and if you think it's really cool to have someone come back from the Middle East and you have the money in your budget, like, why would you ask permission for that?
No, maybe not that. But thinking of you at the table, right? And I love that. I love that attitude. So everyone listening, like, just go for it. But if you're sitting at the table and you are just coming up with ideas or like, have you been told, maybe let me ask it this way. Have you been told no during your career?
Yeah, definitely. It's been when it's been like obscene amount of money, though. But I've also been told repeatedly that things are a bad idea that I've done. Like after the marathon bombing, for example, there was a couple of things that happened in the marathon bombing, which we'll just leave, you know, when we came back to play. And there are things where like even Charles was like, I don't know, because he was back with it. He's like, I don't know. Like, I don't think we should do that. And other people were like, you can't do this. You can't do this. This will be bad. And I was like, respectfully, I don't march into your office repeatedly and tell you what bad. I make my voice, my opinion known once, but it's your area. When you choose to disregard what I have to say and go in a different direction, I don't repeatedly march into your office and tell you what a bad idea it is. So thanks, but you were noted the first time. And I'm gonna go with my decision.
So that's impressive. So people are telling you no. You got your old boss who's now back. So somebody who taught you a lot of everything that you know. And then you have others that you respect.
And he wasn't telling me no. He was just questioning. He was like, this is a lot. Like, this is a lot.
Sure.
But I think I'm more comfortable than he is with going right to the line. Like, he pushes me creatively, and I think I push him closer to the line.
But what makes me like what I'm thinking of, like I'm picturing myself or the people who are listening, I'm picturing them in your situation. Like, what do you, when you are that bold or brave to say, yeah, okay, I hear everybody, but I'm going to keep going because I think this is a good idea. Like, what is it that gives you that sense of, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is. I guess it's back to courage, right? Like, what gives you that sort of, what empowers you to do that?
I think you just know it. Like, you just know it in your bones. Like, it's just your gut. Like, I wish I could say that there was something more magical or some kind of like profound thought process that goes into this, or some wellness that goes into like giving yourself like some level of confidence. I mean, I'm insecure about everything. I feel like a sham every single day. However, when there comes these moments and I just know that this is absolutely going to be fantastic, then I really trust that.
I love that. So you just trust it, even though you feel, some days you feel insecure, but the days that you feel like, no, I know this is the right thing to do, you just go for it.
Yeah. And then like 5 minutes before it actually happens, I'm like, shit, was this the right thing to do? And then I'm like, no, it was. And I've had a lot of occasions where people have come up to me over the years and they've been like, I didn't see it, but that was awesome. That moment was awesome.
You know, and the reality of it is too, is that you are going to have some misses, right?
Yeah, like, totally.
You go for it, but know that, yeah, if you miss, it's not career ending.
Right. And 9 times out of 10, like in my line of work, if you miss, people don't really know it because they weren't really aware of what was supposed to happen anyways. Anybody that wants this job needs to embrace the exhaustive nature of it. And it's only, in my opinion, gotten kind of worse over the years. You know what I mean? Like, we were able to compartmentalize before, you know, ever since you got that BlackBerry, we've all been on calls. You know what I mean? And when you're working for a place that on some level is supposed to, or bears the responsibility of setting a cultural tone, especially like in baseball, you know, in sports in general, you're working in complement to society. And at some point, you know, sports over history has pushed the envelope for society. And in some ways, it's catching up to society. Being so high profile, a sports team in such a fabric of a community, like, people really care. So you are on call to people's feelings. And in this environment, it only gets more and more and more relentless, shall I say.
Let's talk about baseball, and we can end here after this, but let's talk about baseball catching up to society. And then you just made me think of everything that's going on with this racial awakening we're having in our country, and everybody is going to their organizations that they work for and they want to talk about it. They want to know what they're doing. And there's just so many conversations happening. And what I'm hearing from other women who work in sports and entertainment is there's a lot of talk, but no one's really doing anything. You got some teams that are doing things. You got some organizations that are, you know, putting their money where their mouth is. But then you have other teams that are really just talk and they're not doing anything. And they want to see change. What advice, I know this is not happening from the Red Sox, at least from the outside looking in, what advice would you give women who are in those shoes, who really do want to go in and make change?
Well, I don't think it's about women. You touched on it. Like, I know that we focus on women, but it's about race too. Like, it's about culture. It's about inclusion on so many different levels. I mean, I can only speak to what we've been doing. You know, the Red Sox, I think, currently have the most vice presidents in female positions of anybody in baseball. But making sure women are at the table in meaningful ways. But beyond that, once you start getting into gender, you start creating a culture where people feel inclusive, not only, as it pertains to race and sexual orientation and all those sorts of things. And it's watching these organizations sort of evolve into this. Because here's the thing, like a lot of what is going on in the world has turned so political. And someone asked me the question the other day and said, like, do you take political sides? And it was like, no, we don't, because we're a sports team, right? Like we have fans that run the spectrum, but we don't have to bear the burden of being political. We get to just be right. So you find yourself in these instances of society where if you chose to look at it like, oh, in fear of like, that's political or that's this or that's that, like, that's not the right way to look at it. You just have to look at it like right or wrong, and you also have to be human enough to admit when you've done a bad job. And that's a huge part of it. So like for us, we had instances a couple years ago where a player came out and said that they were subject to a racial slur. And that was a very public thing. To our credit, like we owned it. And we said, we believe the player. We said, we have a lot of work to do. We talked to our own players. We talked to them. But then what we heard from our event staff and other people that work there was like, we only care because it happened to a player. It happens to me all the time. And we had one supervisor in particular say how it had happened a crazy amount of times in one season. And so we have gone through this exercise since then, and it's been a couple years now, where we have been having conversations surrounding race. We now give out a lifetime ban if you use a racial or, use hate speech, because it's just as much as we've had racial slurs, we've had homophobic slurs. And we will deliver someone the news that they are no longer welcome at Fenway Park from that example. And so now we're in the process of taking that exercise. Those conversations have happened. They've been good conversations, and saying, what are the next steps with that? Like, let's stop talking about this and what are we really doing? So we are internally coming through, I sit on a social justice committee internally where we are talking about what is our path forward. And most importantly, what is a sustainable path forward? What is a meaningful path forward? And isn't just window dressing, and isn't just talking the talk, and isn't just checking the box or tokenizing anybody. And these are real hard, challenging conversations, but none of which could be done if we didn't in some way own our own faults. Because you can't come to a place where you are willing to make change if you haven't acknowledged that you need change first. So that's what we're doing. But we're also not saying that we're going to fix these things by tomorrow. Right. We've charted out paths for ourselves for 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. And what is meaningful change, and what are meaningful goals, and what does that really look like?
Yes.
And just sort of go from there.
I think that's really helpful. I think it's helpful for people who are listening and feeling stuck. It's almost like you've just kind of given them a few steps, like a roadmap to get started. And it's almost like they don't know what they don't know. Right. And I'm thinking of the women who were listening and the women who have been at my monthly happy hour, right? Like, and it's been a conversation. It's been a topic that's come up a lot. Right. And I don't know what to do. So hearing your unique perspective, I think will give them some just insight into, oh, okay, this is how they did it. Oh, there's no right answer, right? So I think that was really helpful.
There's no right answer, and it's also not something that's like the HR department needs to deal with this. Like it's really interesting because when you start having conversations about different types of roles and different things like that, it's this cultural change within an organization is not the burden of one department. It is everyone that needs to look at all of their practices. Amen,
Sarah.
Well, it's interesting because like you think about it, like we have the concourse entertainment in the ballpark, something as simple as that. I had someone different in charge of it, a Black male in charge of it, and the whole feel of it changed, and it was better, and we won an award for it. And I was like, he's like, no, you were just tired of it. You were just mailing it in that area. You're right. But you're right. Like I had other things but when delegating, when given responsibility and autonomy and the ability to implement change to people of color and people that are different than you, that just think differently than you get change, and change isn't a bad thing. It's just not this great unknown it's an unknown, but change isn't a bad word.
No. Sarah, this has been incredible. I want to end with, your career has been funny, inspiring, empowering, like badass, all the things. What's one thing you would do differently?
I probably would have advocated for myself a little bit better, like I talked about earlier. You think about your own personal self a little bit better, because I think that advocating for myself a little bit better, I think it was a different space and time, and I think there's just a lot more avenues for it. Like I felt like when I was coming up, the jobs for people to be closer to the money were largely for men, and the jobs for women focused more on hospitality. And I think that there's an intermingling there that is nuanced, and it's important. I think it's important for women to advance in all roles of society, but with that comes like strong financial and sales skills. I don't know if that's the right answer though.
I don't know if there is a right answer. Only you can tell us.
No, I know. I really enjoyed it. Like, I don't know that there is much that I would change. I probably maybe should have not written off that portion so quickly. Like, I didn't like that cold calling. So I just blanked out all of sales.
Right.
I probably didn't acknowledge that there are so many different types of sales.
Mm-hmm.
I do think, though, at the end of the day, I probably would have come to the belief that it's not my thing.
Yep.
But I do think it's a critically important thing to be a part of. One of the things that I've been able to do well is I have a strong opinion about my personal financial knowledge and feel very responsible for how I'm dealing with money and handling my own money. I think diving deeper into the knowledge of the finances of the sport in a lot of different ways is probably something that needs a little bit more of a female influence and could benefit from a female influence.
Yeah, I love that. That's good stuff. Last thing, I hate to end, but if someone wanted to get in contact with you, I'm sure they will, because you have a very unique perspective. It's been a great conversation. How can someone get in touch with you?
Oh, God, I would probably just say my email address. You can write a letter to me at the Red Sox, or you can send me an email. I'm on LinkedIn, but I have to admit, I do not check LinkedIn a lot. I'm so bad about these sorts of things. Mm-hmm. People need to understand on this is that Jahaan and I used to sit very, very close to each other. And Jahaan would constantly, people would be sending her flowers or being like, why don't you stay at my vacation home? Or why don't you come to my hotel for free? And I would be like, how does Jahaan get so much free shit? Why are people constantly gifting her? Because I don't have that skill. And it's because you are so much better at building those relationships with people than I ever will be. But I used to just sit there and be like, that was.
You know what's funny about that is sometimes that stuff was from your family.
I know.
You didn't give us your email address. Am I allowed to list that in the show notes?
Sure.
Oh, she said yes, everybody. Sarah, this has been awesome. First boss in sports. Thank you so much for the time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. So what did you think of this episode? Do you know another woman who works or is aspiring to work in sports? Would you do me a favor and share this with them? It would mean so much if together we could support and inspire other women on their journey. And let's stay connected. I love meeting and talking to new people. Follow me on Instagram at Jahaan Blake and join the free Game of Her Own community by visiting jahaanblake.com. I can't wait to meet you.